there is a joke that we say that in Italy we are 60 millions of Italian national soccer coach and also 60 millions of winemakers because everybody know about wine, even if it's not true, of course. And when you start to speak something different that is not Sangiovese, it's not Brunello, it's not Barolo, it's not Ribolla Gialla in Friuli or Amarone in Veneto, they say, no, 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 this is something new, and wine is something that is very connected to the tradition, and so we don't want it.
Welcome to this special Clubhouse session of the Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as members of the Italian wine community engage in fascinating conversations about contemporary wine topics. If you enjoyed the show, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. And remember to subscribe and rate the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods.
Hi everyone, my name is Beatrice and welcome to Italian Wine Clubhouse Ambassadors Corner. Our Clubhouse has been ranking the top amongst Italian wine podcast shows. The show's concept is to let Italian wine ambassadors have the opportunity to interview their favorite producers. This is an episode that gives them a free hand to ask any questions to their selected producers. This session is recorded and will be released in Italian Wine Podcast to reach more listeners, and especially for those who cannot participate due to time zone differences. Our guest host today is Robert Maggi. Born in Puglia and now based in Cardiff, Robert combines Southern Italian passion with British entrepreneurial spirit. A qualified Vinitaly International Wine Ambassador and WSET Level 3 graduate, he has extensive experience in the sector, including time with the award-winning Australian winery Jim Barry Wines. Over the past 10 years, he has focused on promoting Italian wines with his company Wines and Vines, building bridges between producers and consumers, and expanding awareness of Italy's diverse wine scene. Energetic and curious, Robert is always on the lookout for the next great discovery and eager to share it with others. Today, he's gonna interview Nicola Biasi of Nicola Biasi Consulting. So, Robert, Nicola, how you doing, guys?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Beatrice?
Fine. It's a little bit hot in Verona, but that's fine. How you doing, Nicola?
Very, very, very well. The weather is sunny here in Friuli. I'm in Friuli right now, and it's the perfect weather for the ripeness of the grape. So I'm happy about that.
So, Robert, are you ready for our 3 ritual questions?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. So, how did you discover Nicola Biasi Consulting?
Okay, so I first met Nicola in Belgium, actually, at a wine tasting. I tried his wines and a brief chat with him, and it was love at first sip, really. A few months later, we started working together here in the UK.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us, why did you select Nicola as your guest today?
In a few words, Nicola's experience and knowledge is truly fascinating, and his incredible work he's doing with PIWI varieties really deserves to be shared with our amazing wine community.
You're right. What are the learning objectives that we should expect from this interview?
Okay, so today we'll be learning about Nicola's Biasi's pioneering work in sustainable viticulture through PIWI varieties, what they are and how they can shape the future of viticulture. We'll explore the challenges and opportunities of working with non-traditional varieties in Italy and how these varieties are received in both Italian and international markets.
Wow, that sounds great and so interesting. Okay, it's time for me to mute myself and turn the mic over to you, Robert. Have a nice interview, guys. We'll hear us later.
Thank you, Beatrice.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Today I have the great pleasure to interview Nicola Biasi, who, apart from being an incredibly talented winemaker, he also happens to be a generally nice guy. And I feel like every time we meet, I learn something new by just chatting to him. And this is exactly what I hope to achieve today. So, ciao, Nicola. Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast.
Ciao, Robert. Hello, everyone. Robert, thank you so much to ask me to join you for this podcast.
No, it's a pleasure. I feel like everybody I know and I meet in the wine world, I always now tell them to go and taste your wine and go and see you and find you in Trentino. So no, it's an absolute pleasure. And I guess before we start, I have to ask, we're approaching the harvest time. I know we mentioned a little bit about the weather, but what are your thoughts on this year's harvest?
I'm pretty happy about the seasons, how it's going right now, because we have a May with a lot of rain, and so it help us to grow the buds and also the berries. And okay, you know that it's so important the last month before the harvest. So
Of
finger
course.
crossed, and we wait for an excellent harvest.
Good, exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we start?
Yes.
I think we'll start with the basics. Everybody is eager to know, what are PIWI varieties and how did you first become interested in them?
Uh, PV variety is something new if we are talking about Italian winemakers, Italian producer, but they are not really new if we are talking about Europe and especially if we talk about Germany. PV variety are hybrids, so is a cross. They are cross between the European vines and usually the Asian varieties. And why we make this hybrid with this cross? Because we keep the resistance to the disease from the Asian ones and crossing them with the European ones, the European vines that give us the quality of the berries and then the quality in the wines, we can have new kind of vines that keep the same quality of the traditional variety that all of us know. So could be Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, Chardonnay, Merlot, or Cabernet, or whatever. But these new vines are very strong in terms of the resistance to the fungus disease. So it's really something very important if we talk about sustainability and the environment.
Okay, and I think it's good to point out they are not actually immune, but they are very resistant to these varieties,
Yes.
right? To these fungus diseases, right?
Yes, correct. This is very important because in the past, some producers think that these varieties, the PV variety, are immune to this disease, but this is not correct. They are very resistant, depend of variety. For example, Sauvignon Gris is very, very resistant. Sometimes you can go to 0 treatments in one season, but it's not normal. Is typical the average number of treatments that we have to do with the PV variety could be 2, 3, or 4 per year, per season.
Okay, and we'll definitely look at later on at the sustainability and the number of treatments and so on. So how did you first become kind of interested in these varieties? What was the first approach that you had with a PIWI variety?
If I have to be honest, when I decided to plant my first vineyards in Trentino Alto Adige in Val di Non, where my grandfather lived, and I was looking to produce a high quality white wine, and I wanted to find a variety and then produce a wine that could age very, very well during the years with the bottle aging, because I believe that the quality of a wine is not just how good is when it's young, but also how it develops during the bottle aging. And so I wanted to have vines that in their genetics have something strong in terms of the characteristic of the bottle aging development. And so I chose Johanniter. Johanniter comes from Riesling, and it's a PV variety, of course. And so these two factors, so the Riesling characteristic, the Riesling genetics, and also this new idea of viticulture, so use variety that you don't need to spray too many times during the year, was something for me very, very interesting. And I tasted a Johanniter from Switzerland, because when I planted in 2012, Johanniter was not permitted here in Italy. But really, for me, it was something new, and I wanted to try to make something different, taking care about the environment where I grew up when I was young.
Sure, very interesting. And of course, you mentioned you weren't allowed to officially plant Ioniter, and you've often been called a pioneer in Italy for working with PV varieties. And from planting your own vineyard, then you founded the Nicola Biasi Resistenti network, or La Rete Nicola Biasi
Mhm.
Resistenti. And how did this network come about? Was this always in your plans to create a network of small producers that championed these varieties?
If I have to be 100% honest, no. When I planted Ioanniter at my place, I didn't think about a network of a producer, but my project, Vindelaneu, was really, really focused in terms of quality of the wines, because I believe that people is drinking good wines and not sustainable wines. Then if you produce a very high quality wines and you are also sustainability is the perfect match. But first of all, we have to produce quality wines. In the past, winemakers, wine producer probably didn't know how to grow these vines, how to vinificate the grape of PV variety, and probably I'll be the first to be really focused in terms of quality and not just to produce wine from PV variety, but I wanted to produce high quality wines from PV variety. And when I release the Vindelaneu on the market, the quality of these wines, I think that was the goal for my project. And the other producer that planted PV variety and they tasted my own wine, they started to call at me to be advising by me with Nicola Biasi Consulting. And so I started to help different wine producers to increase the quality of their PV wines. And then after that, after 2 or 3 years, with other 5 producers from Friuli, Veneto, and Trentino, we decided to start to really work together with a network, Resistenti Nicola Biasi, where we promote the wines, but also we work every day to increase the quality of our PV wines.
And that's what you just said before. You know, people don't drink sustainable wines; they drink quality wines. It's something that really struck me when you first mentioned it to me, and I totally agree. It's true. People, you know, a glass of wine is a moment of pleasure. So you can be as sustainable as you want, but at the end of the day, it needs to be enjoyable as well. So let's move on and talk a little bit about sustainability, as you mentioned it. In the last few years, there's been a lot of talking about natural wines, organic wines, low intervention wines, biodynamic, you name it. How do PIWI grapes contribute to a lower environmental impact in viticulture, practically?
Yes, but I think that if we are really focused on what is sustainability in viticulture, so it is of course the carbon footprint, the water footprint, and the idea to reduce as much possible the chemicals that we use. Today, the PV varieties are the best solution possible to make a truly sustainable viticulture. Why? Because it's the only way to reduce the number of the treatments that we have to do during the season against the peronospora and the oidium. And you know that all the producers have to spray usually copper and sulfur against the fungus disease, because if we don't do that, we are not going to pick the grape in September because we lose all the production. And usually there is not big difference if you are organic or no, but in the north of Italy you have to spray at least 15 times per year. And every time that we go in the field, in the vineyards with the tractor, we produce carbon footprint, we produce CO2, and we increase our carbon footprint. And we need at least 200, 250 liters of water every treatment that we make in 1 hectare. So it's very easy to understand that if we go down from 15 or 20 to 2, 3, 4, or 5 treatments per year, we reduce a lot. We have a certification in one of the winery that is in the project Resistenti Nicola Biasi, Alba Fiorita. We are in Friuli, close to the border of Veneto, where we have both the PIWI variety but also the traditional variety with the same training system, the same density, everything is exactly the same. And in 1 year, we reduce the carbon footprint of the 40% and the water footprint of 70. So these
Wow.
are numbers very, very strong and big, and there is no organic or biodynamic that can do that right now. So I really believe that this is today the best solution. Then we will see what happens in the future, but today PV variety is the best solution. And now that we finally understand how to make the vinification, and also we started to plant this variety in a very good places, because in the past we had on the market and we tasted sometimes bad wines from PV variety, and the people think that the quality of these wines was lower than the traditional ones, but it was not correct, because the problem was that the winemakers didn't plant these vines in good places, because in our mind we think that if this variety are resistant to the fungus disease, we can plant not on the top of the hill but on the bottom in a very wet places, in wet area. But if we have not enough sun and the grape didn't find the ripeness, we cannot make good wines. But it's the same thing with Sangiovese or Merlot. So
Of
it
course.
was our mistake. We did these mistakes, and also we didn't know how to make the winemaking. Today we know it, and we can make high quality wines. That is so important.
Absolutely. And obviously we won't go into it now, but I know you're doing a lot of work as well with when it comes to vinification in using the right types of yeasts and very kind of geeky stuff for winemakers, which only proves that you are trying to reach the top quality using these great varieties, which obviously is great.
Absolutely. Yes, it is so important, because sometimes the people speak about, I don't know, the winemaking of PV variety, but this is mainly wrong, because we don't speak about the winemaking of the traditional variety, because the Sauvignon Blanc, we work in a different way of Chardonnay, for example, or from a Trebbiano. Sangiovese, I'm not going to vinificate the Sangiovese in the same way of Cabernet Sauvignon. So also for the PV variety, we have to go very, very focused on the characteristic of the single variety. Today in Italy we have 36 different PV variety allowed for the cultivation, and so that we can plant, and every single variety has to be vinificated in their own way. And also it's important the kind of wine that I want to produce. And the last thing is that is also important to plant the right PV variety in the right place. For example, Johanniter works very, very well if we are located in a cold place. And Sauvignon Gris, for example, works very, very well also in a warm place. The same is for Sorelli, that works very, very well in the warm place. So it's so important to plant the right variety in the right place. But at the end, it's exactly the same things that we do with the traditional variety. So there is nothing different. The only problem in the past was that the winemakers didn't know how to work with these varieties.
Yes. Yeah, and hopefully things will change. I see a lot of producers are slowly getting interested in these varieties, and I'm sure it's eventually it will become the future of viticulture one way or another. Before we move on, I just wanted to, I know you mentioned Alba Fiorita, the winery. I just want to really recommend anyone who's listening to go and visit them in Friuli. They have a lovely agriturismo as well. Be wary of going out for an aperitivo with, we had a very quiet one last time.
Yeah, Alba Fiorita is one of the winery that started the project Resistenti Nicola Biasi. And just to give you an idea, we are in Latisana. We have a very sandy soil there, and so we make a project about the wines that we wanted to do, because we knew that we have a sandy soil. We knew that the weather is pretty warm, maybe hot during the summer. So we knew that we had to pick early the grape to keep the acidity higher as possible. And in the same time, we wanted to make wines that works very, very well in the agriturismo. So we decided to plant Sorelli and Sauvignon Cretos with a specific kind of rootstock that help us to keep the acidity as much as possible. That warm area was not really good for the acidity, but working in that way, we can keep the freshness in our wines. And so the project, the wines, Mam and Sophie works very, very well. And just to give you an idea, in the past, all the red wines of Alba Fiorita comes from traditional variety, Merlot and Cabernet Franc, but we are so happy about the PIWI variety that 2 years ago we take out all the Cabernet Franc and we planted a PIWI variety from Pinot Noir.
Amazing, amazing. I think you need to be a little bit brave when working with PV varieties, and all of the producers I've met from the network have, a little bit of that courage, to go the extra step and removing, traditional varieties and planting these PV varieties. Moving on, the next question. I know many listeners might associate Italian wine with tradition. We have so many varieties. Each region is so rich with its heritage. How do you balance innovation? If we want to say innovation by planting these varieties with Italy's deep-rooted wine heritage.
It's not easy. It's not easy, special because in Italy we are really, really focused on the variety, and sometimes we take care more about the varieties than the terroir, than the place, than the vineyards in terms of location. But I really believe that if we are not going to change something in our approach to produce wines, we are not be able to produce quality wines in the future, because the climate change is present and is
It's real.
it's real. Every year is stronger than the previous one, and so we have to change. We have to do something. Of course, PV variety are also an idea to do something better for the environment, going down of the 40% with the CO2 and save the 70% of the water, but is also an idea to change the variety that we use to put in the glass the best wine possible from that area. And in my opinion, this is very, very important. In Italy, in the last 2 years, everybody talking about the climate change say that we have to move our vineyards in the north or going up in terms of altitude. And I'm a big fan of mountain wines, but this is not the solution, in my opinion. This is the solution just on the books for, I don't know, a university. But for example, if I am a producer in Tuscany, in Grosseto, how can I move and or transfer my vineyards up in the north or up in terms of altitude? I should sell everything to someone and then transfer everything, my family, everyone's in Switzerland, for example. This is not a solution that we can really do. And so my idea is that in the future, we will have to plant varieties that perform better with the weather, with the sun, with the rain, with the temperature that we have today. So what I think that if where Sangiovese works very, very well 40 years ago, probably Sangiovese is not the variety for that area for the future. So
Sure.
we have to think about the varieties, because the varieties, the vines are so important in terms of winemaking, in terms of because we need a variety that works very, very well in that area, but it's not important to use the same variety that my grandparents used. It's important to use a variety that works so well in that area today. And also because the terroir has to be more important than the variety. Because if it's not, we have a problem. Because we speak that Italy is so important for many terroirs, many areas, but if the variety is more strong than the terroir, I think that the future of the Italian wines will be very, very difficult. But I'm pretty sure that our terroirs are more strong than variety, and we will have just to change varieties, planted the ones that perform better with the climate that we have today.
Of course, and I know we spoke about this before. You're not saying let's remove all Sangiovese tomorrow and plant PV varieties in Montalcino. By all means, it's going to take time. It's a slower process, but we have to start, I guess, somewhere. And especially the bureaucratic side of things in Italy, it can take a long time. So it's better that we start moving, right?
Yeah, it's not also in terms of bureaucracy, it's not easy because every single appellation had to allow it a new variety, and also so for the PV variety. For example, in Tuscany, no one of the 36 PV variety that we can plant in Italy are allowed in Tuscany. So today, a producer from Tuscany cannot plant PV variety. And this is really a pity because I think that if we can plant PV variety in Emilia Romagna, I don't know what could happen, what is so different if we plant them in Tuscany. I think that we should leave the producer to decide if they wanted to
Sure.
plant this variety, and of course that then is business. If they are going to make good wines with good promotion, good marketing, they will sell the wines, and so they were right. If they are not going to make good wines, it doesn't work. But it depends of the winemakers. It's too difficult if also the bureaucracy is against the innovation. But today I'm not talking about the PV variety. The problem about innovation is everywhere in the Italian wine world. For example, I bought a vineyard in Mosel in Germany, and I can spray with a drone. So it's more safely for the
Of
workers
course.
because we don't need to go with a tractor in the field. So it's also more safe for our collaborators. And in Italy, it's forbidden. And the question is why? Because the problem, talking about the law in Italy, is that with the drone, maybe the spray that you do can go close to the neighbors or moving with the hair, but the new drones work so close to the vineyards that probably they are better than the classic treatments that we make with a tractor. So we really have to change our mind also in terms of bureaucracy and try to do the best things for the environment and for the quality of the wines, because you know, Robert, better than me that this moment also for the market is not easy, and so we have really to make the best wine possible, and also the bureaucracy has to help us to put all the producer in the best condition to work
To
and
deliver,
to
yeah.
make quality. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. And obviously, we'll move now on to the wines because it's the bureaucracy is a little bit boring.
Yeah.
What have been the biggest challenges that you faced introducing your wines, the PB wines, into the Italian market. I've tasted, I think, all of the wines that you produce with the network, and one way or another, they're all really good wines, exceptional wines. There's nothing bad about them. They are really interesting wines to drink, both for a wine lover than a non-wine lover. So, what's the biggest challenges that you've faced?
Ma the big problem that I have is to find a way to open a bottle and put the wine in the glass, because after the customers, the wine lovers taste the wines, there are no problems also to sell them. But if you just speak about PV variety, is a difficult name, is something that the people doesn't know. In Italy, we think that there is a joke that we say that in Italy we are 60 millions of Italian national soccer coach and also 60 millions of winemakers, because everybody know about wine, even if it's not true, of course. And when you start to speak something different that is not Sangiovese, is not Brunello, is not Barolo, is not Ribolla Gialla in Friuli or Amarone in Veneto, they say, no, 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 this is something new, and wine is something that is very connected to the tradition, and so we don't want it. And also because the other problem is that when we speak about hybrids, the people think that these new varieties comes from something strange in a laboratory, or they think that they are OGM, but they are not. And because the PV variety born from a natural pollination, so it's something that could happen in a natural way in the nature, but of course there are scientists that made it to find the better variety possible, but it's something that could be definitely natural. And so the people are a little bit afraid of these new varieties. And so this is the most difficult that I found. But when I have the time to open the bottle and explain all the project Resistenti Nicola Biasi, really it works. And the other thing is that it's important that all the chain know about the project, because if I sell the wine at the owner of the restaurant, but the owner of the restaurant doesn't explain the project to the sommelier, it's very difficult to sell the wine, because today no one in a wine list probably ask or chose a PV variety. We have to make a lot of tasting and master classes to explain our wines.
Sure. And we've spoken also about this before. I think sometimes trying to talk about PB wines and separate them, in a way, it's like we are in Italian is ghettizzare, and
Yeah.
I'm missing the word in English. It's wrong at the same time. They're just natural varieties, like any other varieties, like Sangiovese, but just they have a different name and happen to be resistant to fungal diseases. So absolutely. And by the way, obviously, in the next few years, we'll see the first Prosecco bottles being produced with a PIWI glera, which is also very interesting. So if also the Prosecco consortium has jumped on this, it must be something important.
Yeah, but I had 1 month ago a tasting with Vivai Cooperativi Rauscedo, and I was one of the speaker in the masterclass, and we tasted 10 different Pinot Grigio, and so the base of these wines were the traditional Pinot Grigio. We added the 10%, the 20%, the 50% of PV variety, and there were 50 people in the tasting and all professionals, and no one recognized the wines with the PV variety in the blend. And this is for me is very, very important, because we have to keep the quality higher possible, because once again, the people drink good wines, and wines that put the terroir in the glass. This is really the most important thing. But with the PV variety, you can do that. Of course, you have to plant the right PV variety in the right place. But this is exactly the same. If I plant Sangiovese in Trentino Alto Adige, I'm going to make a bad wine. But it's not a problem of Sangiovese. It's a problem
It's
of
like you mentioned as
Nicola
well
that make
before.
a
Yeah,
mistakes. Yeah.
exactly. If one of your wines is not good, it's Nicola's problem, not the PIWI problem.
Yes, always.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel like internationally the reception has been different? Consumers and sommeliers more open already to these varieties?
Yes, absolutely yes. And just to give you two examples, in Belgium and where we met, for example, yes, they are more open because more or less the 50% of the surface under vines in Belgium is with PV variety. So they already know about Johanniter, Bronner, and so it's more easy. Just because even if Italy, of course, is more important in terms of wine business than Belgium, but in Belgium they are more in advance talking about the PV variety because they know better than us probably this. I'm talking about the customers, the PV variety. And in the same time, I feel more open mind in the USA because when I was in New York with I think 2 or 3 years ago when Vindelaneo was for the first time Tre Bicchieri Gambero Rosso, and during the masterclass, the people are more, how can I say?
Open-minded?
Yeah, open-minded, yes, but also more simple when they think about something. They say,
Okay.
okay, I taste the wine, this is good, and then you show me that you can reduce the 40% of the carbon footprint. Okay, deal done. I love it.
They don't have
Period.
preconceptions in
Yes,
when tasting the wine.
exactly. And in Italy it's more difficult because in Italy the people say, okay, but maybe after 20 years the PV variety can lose the resistance to the disease. Okay, yes, but first of all, you don't know it, and no one know about it. And then even if the PV variety after 20 years lose the resistance to the disease, okay, but if the wine is good and for 20 years I reduce the carbon footprint of 40%, it's better than
It's a
the
big change, of
traditional
course.
ones.
Absolutely. Okay, we have to move on because it's time to talk about your
Yeah,
own wine, Vin dell'Aneo. I know you mentioned it before. Of course, made you mentioned with the PV variety Johanniter. This is a truly exceptional wine that I've been very lucky to taste many times and different vintages. Can you just share the story of how this wine has become one of Italy's finest white wines?
thank you to say that, and I'm very happy about the success of Vindelaneo. And I think that Vindelaneo becomes one of the most important white wines in Italy because behind this wine, I had a project. I wanted to make a high quality wines. I planted in an area, Val di Non, that in my opinion is very good for the viticulture. It's not very famous. Of course, it's not famous at all because it's famous for
Yeah,
the apple trees and not for the wines. But with the climate change going up at we are close to 1,000 meters above the sea level, and I planted with a crazy density because the first vineyard that I planted is 16,000 vines per hectare, where the average density in Italy is 4,000. So it's 4 times more the density
the
that,
density. Yeah, wow.
yeah. Everything was done to make the best wine possible. The idea wasn't to make a sustainable wines. The idea was to produce the best wine possible. So also the winemaking is in a Burgundy way. So is barrel fermented, a lot of batonnage. I release the wine after 2 years. So many details that help me to make a high quality wines from Johanniter. But the most important thing was the project. And then, the name Vindelaneo, that in Italian means wine of the snow. And sometimes the people think that it's a sweet wine because they think about
Yeah,
ice wines, etc. But it is not. It is a dry, still white wine. But the name comes because the 12th of October 2013, when I wake up to pick the grape for the first time, I just opened the windows and everything was covered by the snow. And it never happens in October to have the snow in Corridor in Val di Non. And so after a very strong harvest, because it was very, very cold, that it is good for the grape, for the vinification and for the wine, but believe me, not very good for the people that had to pick the grape. Yeah, I decide to give the name to the wine Vin della Neu, that means wine of the snow. It's a very limited release because today I'm producing 1,000 bottles, but I think that I cannot say that Vin della Neu is the best wine from PIWI variety, but I'm sure that I can say that Vin della Neu is the first wine from PIWI variety that tried to produce an icon wine.
Absolutely, and I think you've nailed it. It's a truly exceptional wine. You can see it has a lot of aging potential, so complex. You're doing a great job. So, in fact, I think you're planting some more vineyards, right?
Yes, this year I planted other 0.25 hectares, and next year I will finish the project for now. And so in total, I'm going to produce around 2,500 bottles of Vin della Neu, that at the end is all the garden of my house on the Dolomites.
Amazing. And of course, I've been there, and I highly recommend anyone to get in touch with you to go and visit, because it's really worth it. And in a way, the Vin della Neu, I think it's that wine that is maybe opening some doors to other wines made with PV varieties, especially in your network with the other producers. It's always the wine that when you open the bottle, it gets people attention. So it fits perfectly in the whole work that you're doing with the network.
Yes, I think that at the end, the most important things of Vin della Neu is that this wine show to everybody that we can do it. So there are no difference between wines from PV variety or others variety. So if we work in the right way, we can make amazing wines. And for that, I always want to make tastings not just with PV variety, but with all the other wines. Because we are talking about wines. There is no difference. Because if the wine from PV variety is good, it's okay. Because if it's not, I cannot say, okay, but this is more sustainability and so I'm going to buy it. No, it doesn't work. We have to make the same quality or better quality than the traditional wines to go on the market with a strong identity, and we have to be 100% sure of the quality of the wines that we have in the bottles. And I really believe that Vin della Neu show to everybody that PV variety has exactly the same potential in terms of quality of the other ones, of the traditional ones.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. And just before we wrap things up, I know you love a challenge, and you mentioned before as well, in recent years, you also bought a vineyard in Mosel, in Germany. What is all this about?
Yeah, 3 years ago, I bought a very small vineyard in Mosel, and because I love Riesling, I love the white that age very, very well, because I like to open old bottles of white wines, maybe more than old bottles of red wines, but this is just my taste. And Mosel is amazing because in Mosel I can, under the appellation, so is Mosel on the label, I can produce Riesling or I can produce Johanniter. I can use the drones for the treatments. I can do more or less everything I want, of course, following the rules, but they are more open mind. And just to give you an idea, when I bought the vineyards, and I produce a very high quality Riesling, but after the vintage 2023, I decided to replace all the vines because it was very, very old, and we miss the 40% of the vines. So we need to replanted the whole vineyards, and I planted 50% Riesling and 50% Johanniter. And this is for me a kind of salad jockey where I can do all my experiment. So try to blend the Riesling with the Johanniter, plant the Johanniter in a different place, and working with the drones. So it's a very special project where I can make a lot of experiment and following my goals. And the goal has to be produce the best wine possible with sustainability. But I really wanted to make a connection between tradition, so Riesling, and innovation with the Johanniter.
Very interesting, and looking forward to taste the wines in the next few vintages.
Yeah,
Okay, I
for
think
sure.
we are coming to the end. I can't thank you enough for being here today, Nicola. It's been really interesting speaking with you, and I hope our listeners as well have kind of been inspired or a little bit of, become a little bit more curious about PIWI varieties. And I'm sure in the future, this inevitably we'll be hearing about these varieties more and more. And as long as they produce quality wines, I don't see why we shouldn't be focusing on these grapes.
Yeah, I agree with you. And thank you so much, Robert, for your time and to invited me to this podcast.
Thank you so much, guys. It was such an interesting interview. Really, it was amazing. And I sincerely thank you also for the time and effort to be here in the same place for doing this interview. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope that you enjoyed it. You both, I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do.
Perfect. So, for wrap things up, for those who are interested to participate, just send us a DM through our Instagram or mail our Italian Wine Podcast producer at info@italianwinepodcast.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening in. And this is a wrap from Italian Wine Podcast. Bye!
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through italianwinepodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.